Welcome to the Charity Changemakers Podcast, the show where we dive into the journeys, challenges and successes of the leaders shaping the sector today. Each episode I'll be sitting down with the senior charity leaders to hear their stories, uncover their insights and explore what it really takes to drive change today. And if you enjoy the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe, like and share to help us reach as many people as possible and showcase the incredible charities that are coming on the show. So whether you're a charity professional, a trustee, thinking about joining the sector or making that next step in your career, or just passionate about making an impact, then this podcast is for you. Let's get started. I'm really pleased today to have Hilary Evans-Newton, who's the Chief Executive of Alzheimer's Research UK, come on the Charity Changemakers Podcast. What a really insightful conversation that we have, and some reflections on her journey through her career within the charity sector, from her first step of working with what's now known as Age UK, and very much around advocacy and influencing, and then opportunities that came through the organisation there to give a real breadth of experience that allowed her to make a transition into a director role at Alzheimer's Research UK just over 12 years ago, and then stepping into the chief executive after 2 years within the organisation. You're going to really enjoy this conversation, and we're going to talk about how strength of leadership of taking an organisation from 45 people to now over 300, an organisation that was turning over £10 million 12 years ago that's now in and around the 60 million each year. So an organisation that's been through an impressive amount of growth, but also have an impressive amount of impact, made some bold statements 10 years ago that they've seen come true. So you're going to really enjoy this conversation. That's enough from me. Let's get on and meet our changemaker. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Hilary from Alzheimer's Research UK. So thank you so much for coming along and coming on the Charity Changemakers podcast.
Pleasure, good to be here.
Yeah, no, that's fab. And I can never do justice to the introductions as best as I can try beforehand. So Hilary, if you just take a minute or two, just introduce who you are, your role, what you do and who you work for.
I'm Hilary Evans-Newton. I'm Chief Executive of Alzheimer's Research UK. So we're the largest medical research funder in the UK. And we are here to find a cure for the diseases that cause dementia. I've been Chief Exec for bang on 10 years actually this week.
Right. Yes, yeah, brilliant. And we're going to be hearing, through the podcast a little bit of that journey as to becoming chief executive, obviously, of the organisation, and I guess delving into what 10 years within the role has looked like, and how the organisation has changed, has grown, has transformed through that period. But we'd like to start these podcasts off with some quickfire questions, opportunity obviously for the listener to get to know you a little bit better, and understand some of the things that make you tick. So what can you share with us, either something that you're listening to at the moment, whether that's a podcast or a book that you're reading at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So I'm tend to be a bit more of a podcast listener than a reader at the moment. So I often listen to things I guess that align with my sort of hobbies outside work. So I like cooking. So I often listen to a lot of the foodie podcasts, and I really like the sort of biographical podcasts as well. So where you've got people's sort of life stories and food that intertwine, and there's a few of those podcasts that I really enjoy. And I have a stack of books next to my bed, like many people, which I haven't quite got to due to sort of small children and the ability to get stuck into books. But yes, they're safe for holidays at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. And I think that the medium of podcasts are just brilliant, aren't they? You can just sort of dip into them, whether that's, I know people that dip into them when they're, out walking the dog, or, in the gym, whatever it is, you can, and bite size and take it in chunks as and when. So no, that's great. I still, we're a few episodes into this season. I still think this is quite a tricky question, but what is a quality that you had as a child that you still have today as an adult?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that actually. And so I would say I've always been broadly interested in people and other people. And I've probably always had, I guess, that sort of ability to want to make sure other people are okay, look after other people. And actually, I was clearing out some stuff at home the other day, and I came across an old, I think it was like a high school kind of leavers book. Yeah. And I was sort of flicking through bits of that. And actually, it was a couple of my friends from, so this was when I was 16, sort of saying in there, what you'll be remembered for at school. And actually there was a few themes in there sort of saying it's sort of peacemaker or wanting to bring people together when there's, teenage girls, there's, a few rifts happening. And then when I was at university, I think in my Hall of Residence, I got the Claire Rayner Award as being a bit of a kind of agony aunt or someone to go to if they had a problem.
Yeah.
And so I guess that has actually sort of come through now, sort of 25 years later, in a role where, ultimately I think being a charity CEO and what you're doing actually is often about people and improving people's lives in some way, or speaking out and advocating for people who don't necessarily have a voice. And so I think probably those themes have sort of come through, and probably, we'll probably get to it, but sort of led me to the voluntary sector being my sort of home.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And that'd be really fascinating to that nurturing, that caring side, that people's perspective, and how that impacts and affects your leadership on a daily basis. Yeah, well, absolutely, we definitely need to unpick that a little bit further. But yeah, final quick fire question for you. You've got a completely free day. I'm not sure how often they come along for you, but if you've got a completely free day, how are you spending it?
I would say I probably have two versions of a completely free day.
Sure.
One free day would be, a non-working day with my 3 children,
Sure.
which will be, very much kind of focused around them and their activities. Not hugely free for me, but hugely fun. They're quite small, so I've got three children under 8. But a proper free day to myself would probably just spending some time not talking to anyone else, actually just in the kind of peace and quiet. I love being outdoors. So probably sort of doing some exercise, doing something for myself. I like spending time in the garden and doing gardening. I'm someone I'm not great at just sitting down, so often sort of having a bit of a project or doing something practical, and spending the whole day doing that undisturbed would probably be my ideal day to myself.
And with 3 children under the age of 8, I'm sure those days don't come along too often. To have to be enjoy when they do. So no, that's great.
Yeah.
Good. It is a big question when we start off with this question about trying to find out how people found their way into the charity sector, but always interested as to how that journey started. We've not talked to many people yet who have said, blimey, yeah, growing up I knew I wanted to go and work in the charity sector. I was always going to I wanted to be a chief executive in the sector, or a director of fundraising, or a director of people within the sector. So how did the journey begin for you?
Yeah, so similarly, there wasn't ever a grand plan. I guess there was always like I sort of said, that that sort of interest in advocating and supporting people had been something that I was probably aware of when I was younger. I did a politics degree at university. I started my career working in Parliament for a number of years. And then worked in corporate affairs, where most of my clients were from big companies, so ranging from kind of nuclear energy, pharmaceuticals, construction. But I did have some pro bono clients, which were some smaller charities. And I loved doing that work. And so it quite quickly transpired that actually that was where my heart certainly was. And so I guess what I learned from the world of politics and from working with companies was very helpful, partly in showing me kind of actually a career trajectory that I probably didn't want to take, but also using those tools to then support and help organisations that maybe didn't have the ability to sort of navigate corporate affairs or the political arena to further their cause. So I had the opportunity then to join Age Concern, as it was then, that then merged with Help the Aged to form Age UK, as it is now. And so I went in as a government affairs manager.
Right.
My first role in a charity, which I absolutely loved. Fantastic organisation, huge breadth in terms of what I could do in that role. And that very quickly felt just the right place to be in terms of an organisation, but actually the sector as a whole. And I've not looked back from there.
Yeah. So was that sort of within sort of an advocacy type of role then within Age UK as they are now? Yes. Yeah. And what did that look like? I guess in those days, you think we talk about these organisations day in, day out. And, people will know, I guess, the likes of Age UK or Mind, those types of organisations for their delivery of service, but not necessarily, I guess, the advocacy work that they're doing, on that side. So it'd be fascinating to hear a little bit more about what that looked like.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. And, we were advocating for essentially everyone over the age of 55. So everyone in later life. And that was everything from, healthcare, food in hospitals, social care, pension policy, digital inclusion, sort of aging housing policy. So pretty much every area of government policy, Age Concern, Age UK has got a role in some way. And I found that really interesting. And on the large part, you're the voice of older people. There was huge amounts of interaction and a real, I think, partnership between the charity and government and other advocacy groups. An organisation that was and is, is Age UK delivering services on the ground and a, at the time, a sort of federated model of, I think about 180 at the time, smaller charities based in the community. So really dynamic organisation. And I led a number of big campaigns that were bringing together the policy work of the organisation, the advocacy work, the sort of PR positioning, but also in terms of then actually our role as a service provider and what that looked like. So I ran a number of big campaigns around women in pensions, around sort of changes in pension age, a continued campaign which sort of still exists because obviously we haven't fixed our sort of social care system in terms of funding and quality of social care. But you went from, I guess, that sort of advocacy to also sort of aging society and what that looks like. As this was probably over 15 years ago, but looking at an aging society, looking at a baby boomer population, what is it that policymakers needed to really think about from a sort of macro level, and that I think was really interesting. And actually, the role that a charity played in that conversation was absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've managed to get foot in the door in the charity sector, found a sector that you enjoy and like you're saying, got that value alignment from you as an individual. What was it that helped you to progress your career? I mean, within that organisation, and I think the move then, a few years later into where you are now. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was probably at Age UK about 6-7 years. So I after a year or two, obviously, Age Concern merged with Help the Aged, so completely new organisation and structure. I then eventually became head of campaigns and public affairs for Age UK.
Yeah.
And had a number of different opportunities in that role. So my sort of role grew, my teams grew. So I had a sort of couple of promotions within that time, and was really lucky to work in a large organisation that was growing, that had big ambition, and a team and leadership that gave me a huge amount of space and freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I also had the opportunity to take on, I guess, sort of secondments within that role. So I spent a year doing a role as sort of head of international and of UK campaigns. So Age UK has a sort of international arm through Help Age International, and had just set up Age International. So that gave me a sort of window into sort of international influencing and fundraising appeals. But also, I guess, the sort of wider workings of the organisation. So, fundraising, positioning, corporate partnerships, some of the governance around the organisation, working very closely with the chief executive and then charity director. And I think that, gave me, I guess, a sort of a leadership role with that organisation, so the breadth of what we were doing. And after a number of years, hugely enjoyable. I think there was probably something we wanted to, I guess, have almost sort of a clearer cause. So actually, there was so many things that you could do within that role. Actually being able to go maybe to a smaller organisation and to use the knowledge and expertise that I built up there to work on, an issue that was close to my heart and one that I knew a lot about, but had clearly not had huge amounts of attention or funding. So I was approached about the role at Alzheimer's Research UK, really small organisation at the time. So a smaller team than I had in Age UK, a smaller budget than I had in Age UK for the whole organisation, but moved there as a director.
Yeah.
So I came here as Director of External Affairs initially, and that was one of 3 new directors, so the first directors really of this charity.
Yeah.
And I'd worked a lot on the sort of social cause side, but a bit on the research side. Age UK at the time did some biomedical research into aging, but there wasn't anyone championing or talking about research into dementia and the ability to understand these diseases and what we might be able to do for people in the future. So that was a real pull to shift to a different organisation at that time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like there's within the role, I guess, the first role within the charity sector and the organisation, there was a bit that culture of, within the leadership team, to give your culture that space to be able to develop and have a variety of different roles and exposure across a variety of different things that really invested in you as an individual,
For sure.
to, I guess, get that experience, that leadership experience and that wide sector experience to be able.
And I think I was lucky. Yeah, so I think I was lucky in the sort of team of people that I was working with in terms of my team. Incredibly strong team, have all gone on to do brilliant things. And a group of peers who I was able to learn a lot from, but gave me a lot of experience in fronting things, speaking at events, doing huge amounts of media. So, relatively early on in my career, I was having that sort of exposure and opportunity to feed into things the wider organisation was doing, but also that sort of external role as well.
Yeah. I think it's one of the greatest strengths of the charity sector, actually, is that it gives people opportunities that in some other sectors you wouldn't necessarily get, because there is just that breadth. And I guess there is that mentality of, it doesn't matter the size of organisation, actually. It can be a £200,000 charity or a 200 million charity, regardless of size, it's all hands on deck. And, there's that opportunity. Of course, people bring the right skills and experience to the role, but there are opportunities to try new things, to get exposure in different areas that, that you might not, I think, within other sectors, other areas. So this transition then into a director level role at Alzheimer's Research UK. Talk to us about that, stepping up into that director level role and what that, I guess at the time, what that felt like and what that looked like.
Yeah, I mean, it was, so in some senses it was sort of daunting to step into an organisation that probably didn't have the sort of structure, didn't have the support that I had within Age UK. But it had huge amounts of potential. So, there were, in some senses, I guess I took a bit of a leap of faith in terms of thinking about what this organisation could be. So I was attracted by the potential this organisation had, fantastic group of people, brilliant chair of board of trustees who'd been in post probably under a year, and sort of looking at building a leadership team. Externally, there was a Prime Minister who just launched the Prime Minister's Challenge on Dementia. There were talks of a G7 focusing on dementia. So you could sort of see externally there was space for this organisation, but also, no one had gone out there to the public and said, support an organisation that's focused on understanding the diseases that are causing dementia and giving the public an organisation and a cause to get behind. And so I guess I could see those opportunities. And I'm someone who I'm driven by big ideas, the ability to think and do things differently. And so I could see that, if I could get this right, this could be a great organisation. So I came in alongside 2 other fantastic directors, all new to the organisation. And essentially we were given a brief by the board of come back in 2 months and give us a new strategy for Alzheimer's Research UK and what it could look like. And a board who was willing to invest in us and the team and the organisation, but take some risks in order to do what this organisation needed to do. And so actually it quite quickly turned to the excitement of what the opportunities were. The external world was changing, the big opportunities for what we could do. And there was a clear opportunity, I think, to resonate with the public about wanting to engage and wanting an organisation to get behind and support. So, really, really exciting opportunity. And, for me in that first director role, a lot of that was shaping what my role was, as well as shaping the organisation and restructuring teams and making a lot of those decisions. And I think I had to sort of find the confidence within to do that, But I was also lucky that the Age UK experience had given me insights into what had worked in that organisation, some learnings about how I wouldn't want to do things, and taking some of the best things that I'd seen from other organisations and big and small charities, and then trying to do that here, but also having a fantastic network. And I think that's the other thing within the sector, no matter what area and issue people have been working on, actually the networks that you can build through the charity sector are fantastic. And so really leaning on peers and reaching out to other people in medical research charities who I probably wasn't at the time as close to get that sort of understanding as to organisations and other disease areas that have gone before and what they could do and what worked and what didn't work. And so in my first sort of 6 to 12 months as a director, I did a lot of sort of reaching out and then trying to feed that back and probably sort of testing and learning what the opportunities could be here for us. But I think that made a big difference.
And that building of the network is, like you say, I think is a critical thing. And obviously, you've been in the organisation, as you said at the start of the conversation, 10 years. I guess that network's always changing and growing. And how do you continue to remain, I guess, engaged with, this sort of peer-to-peer network and learning as your career progresses, as the organisation progresses, as, the whole landscape, I guess, across everything you're doing from the research work to funding, all of those landscapes, everything, it's always a moving picture, right?
Yeah, and I think the people I probably looked to at the start in terms of my peers in other director roles or chief executives, and actually that's changed. I've been here 12 years now, 10 years as chief exec, and and that's probably flipped. Actually, I'm having a lot of those conversations with people who are directors or coming in new chief execs in organisations that are wanting to do things differently, that are sort of breaking into an area where there hasn't been a leading organisation before. So there's certainly that sort of reciprocal relationship, I think, and support and mentoring, which I think has helped me hugely, and I'm really passionate about. But I think I do think that's a strength of the sector, is that there is always a certain element of competition in terms of what people are doing, but actually the ability to share and to cooperate is fantastic, and those sort of learnings. And sometimes that's from outside of the sector too, sort of seeing what's working from, marketing perspective or innovation or, learning from other areas.
And what sort of supported your career journey then within Alzheimer's Research UK? So as you say, sort of 2 years in the director role, then obviously that transition to chief executive. Talk to us about how that came about. Making that step.
So there was an opportunity came up, and a vacant role as chief executive, and initially I think the board were thinking, we'll look to sort of outside, and actually initially sort of saying, maybe outside of the sector, and what are the expertise that we need, and we need someone who can come in and help support the leadership team here, but really look to kind of growth in the future. And so I've sort of been quite clear with the board saying, this is an opportunity that I think would be fantastic. I'd love to be able to contribute and play a part. But if you're looking for someone outside of the sector or different expertise, then that's fine. So there was a few conversations that I think were had amongst the board, and in that time, I guess my role has sort of evolved and probably naturally sort of stepped into probably the space that essentially of the chief execs. So doing a lot of the external work, the positioning of the organisation, was leading on strategy, on people, and I think sort of building, I guess, the sort of building blocks of Alzheimer's Research UK in order for us to sort of fulfil our ambition. And so, then the opportunities came up for, essentially, board had a conversation and said, look, we'd love you to be able to apply for the role. So I did, was successful, and certainly haven't looked back in that time. And I think that has, again, there wasn't a sort of grand plan in doing that. I was, delighted to be here as a director, and would have, certainly wanted to continue for a long time in that role. But I think that the role I've had then over the last 10 years has continued to evolve dramatically. And I think I haven't been in the same role for 10 years. I've probably been 10 different roles over 10 years because we've continued to grow this organisation. So I guess just in terms of sort of numbers, when I joined, I think we were probably 45 members of staff. We're now almost 300. Our income was broadly 10 million. It's now broadly 60 million. So the shift in terms of who we are and what we're able to do has been huge. And in terms of the research that we're funding, we were pretty much purely a response mode grant funder of research. We now have big global strategic projects, huge numbers of different partnerships, quite a dynamic research portfolio. So all of those things have continued to change. And so I think that my development then as chief exec really has been me, I guess, sort of pushing and developing my own ambition within that role and growing the organisation, thus growing the role for me to continually step into, but also then building the leadership team around me. And it really has been a team effort, and that sort of collaboration and partnership between the chair and the board and the leadership team has been absolutely critical to our success.
And do you think that's the starting point? Because I mean, actually, you said earlier, before joining Alzheimer's Research UK, this looked like a really exciting opportunity. Really engaged chair of trustees. Do you think that's the starting point for an organisation to unlock that level, or at least where it's been for you as an organisation, to unlock that level of potential to see this growth from 45 to 300 plus members of staff, from 10 to 60 million in what is a short space of time? And there's not been without challenges in the global context in the last 12 years, right? Do you think that it was the key starting point, or one of the key factors?
Yeah, I think it's certainly one of the key enablers for us as an organisation.
Yeah,
because I think as I sort of mentioned, we have been able to take risks and to think differently and very much position ourselves as sort of a challenger brand within the sector. So acknowledging, there are other organisations in the space that, maybe have a stronger high street presence, stronger brand, greater ability to invest in that themselves and different scale. We're an issue that has essentially, dementia and dementia research, hasn't been at the top of public profile. It was an issue that was and still is often considered by people as a natural part of aging, not a disease in itself, or not something that you would then commit money to fund medical research. Lots of stigma around dementia itself still. So lots of challenges, I think, in terms of what and how we're trying to do things. So that gave us the opportunity to think, well, do we just need to think differently? And do we therefore, as an organisation, need to challenge ourselves in terms of how we operate and what that looks like? And I think because we were coming from the position where, this was sort of 2014 onwards, actually we could create everything that we were doing from a sort of digital platform in a digital world, almost sort of from scratch, rather than turning around to sort of a big ship of a big organisation to then think about what we needed to do and how we wanted to do it. We could do that from the start. And I think that's been really helpful. But yeah, having an engaged board and having a chair who has had a lot of faith in me and in the organisation has been fantastic. But also, continuing to challenge us and then let us show how we can deliver.
Yes.
And having a certain amount of risk and ability to say, look, if it doesn't work, that's fine. But we'd rather you tried.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you reflect on, I guess, the last decade in the chief executive role, what sort of leadership qualities do you think that have really shone through from you that have helped to the organisation to go on this journey of what is significant growth in like I say quite a short period of
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's about the ability to kind of show what that big picture needs to look like. So kind of, where's the ambition? Where's that sort of stretch for everyone in this organisation? And how do I ensure that everyone's bought into what it is we're trying to do and feels that their role is absolutely key in doing that? I think the role, I guess, as a leader within this and a sort of an advocate in sort of global dementia research and policy has been about sort of challenging a status quo, has been about not being willing to put up with, I guess, the current scenario facing people with dementia. And I think that for too long that hasn't been a focus and that hasn't changed. So, ensuring that people living with or at risk of developing dementia are absolutely heart of who we are and our strategy and our story has been really key. And I think that's something that I've been very mindful of and sure that has been front and centre of this organisation and continues to be. And then supporting, our people within the organisation and our supporters who are absolutely critical to that success, and feeling that, they are their contribution in all those different ways is given the sort of attention and the platform. And I think that certainly helped in terms of people telling their stories, people feeling part of something. So I think, that ability to kind of create that team effort in every sense of the word has been really key. And I think then continually looking up and out and pushing. And that's something that, I'm probably someone who's, I don't have huge amounts of patience. I am quite competitive. I'm always wanting to sort of do things bigger and better. And so almost sort of being the organisation's sort of chief advocate, cheerleader in every sort of way, and supporting people along the way to be able to kind of keep up with that ambition, I guess.
Yeah. That's always the challenge, isn't it? Bringing people in an organisation with you, particularly, I guess, like you say, when there was all of that change and that flux. But I think it is exactly, if you keep the story and the impact of who you are and what you're doing and the difference that it's making in people's lives, then that's the motivating factor, isn't it? And if you look back on some of the, because let's be honest, it's not always easy, is it? Clearly, things don't always go well. I mean, if you look back on some of the setbacks or challenges maybe that you've had over, I don't know, the last 10 years in the role, I mean, are there valuable learnings that have come out of some of those challenges for you as an organisation and as an individual?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's certainly been challenges, I think, in terms of what we've done and how we've done it. I think there's a piece around, when things don't go right, is learning from, why they didn't go right, and obviously, how we can change that next time. I think we've been an organisation who, as I said, have looked for those opportunities and wanting to innovate. And I think it has probably led to us doing lots of different things. And so actually, probably in the last year or two, we've really tried to sort of hone back in and think about how we prioritise as an organisation. Be very careful about what we do say yes to. And I think because we're an ambitious bunch, it's quite hard for us to say no to anything, because it could be an opportunity or it could be exciting. But actually, is it really aligned to our kind of core strategy? Is it absolutely Alzheimer's Research UK? What is the return going to be for our organisation? What is that delivering for people? And so probably a learning just in terms of sort of being stricter with ourselves and learning to prioritise. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of charities, that, we all want to do our best. We all want to be doing good things. We don't want to turn down something that, could be a benefit, but it can often allow us to be just spread really, really thinly. And so I think that continuing trying to sort of refine and ensure that we have a kind of clear mindset in terms of where we're going. And so a sort of recent strategy refresh and actually our relatively, we're sort of year or two in with our new brand for a cure. Actually, a lot of the thinking behind that was, that's why we're here. So we've had a couple of sort of brand iterations and rebrands over those 10 years. And the sort of evolution, I guess, is the story of us as an organisation and where we are in dementia research. And this feels absolutely right for us. This is why we're here. This is why people support us. This is why we're funding the science. And this is now within reach. We have 2 medicines that are licensed for early stage Alzheimer's disease. We have, a blood test that will be starting to be used here in the UK to detect people at risk of Alzheimer's disease. Those kind of advances were sort of sci-fi 5 years ago. So that's hugely exciting, but we just need to be really, really focused on what it is we're doing and, and how we kind of focus on those kind of key areas that are going to really deliver for people. So I think that ability to kind of prioritize and to focus and to continually learn from what it is we're doing and that sort of feedback, so that we then do continue to collaborate. Because I think the other thing, it's in a way, running an organization that's relatively small with sort of smaller teams, you've got that ability for everyone to feel quite close and to understand where things are going and what people are doing. And as you grow, you need to ensure you hold on to that culture, but that people instinctively know and understand what that culture is so that they can make decisions in the right way. We like to ensure that people, if they've got good ideas, if they've got the sort of space to innovate in the roles that they're doing and they can feed things up, that people can do that instinctively as an organisation. So we've done a lot of work in terms of the culture of our organisation and investing in people throughout the organisation, which has been another big priority.
Yeah, absolutely. And how's that looked over recent years? I mean, I don't know your I guess your working pattern and whether you're a hybrid organisation or office based or remote based, but I recognise that the changing world and world environments, working environments have changed, as well as obviously, when you're an organisation that's going through growth, it can be difficult kind of to instill that culture. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that's like, and then how you've instilled it in the organisation?
Yeah. So we I think we've probably always been quite a flexible organisation in lots of ways, and that's always been something that's been very important to me. The culture of the organisation is something that people often talk about here. So actually, sort of new starters coming into the organisation, we have some wonderful feedback around sort of people starting and the engagement they've had with the organisation and the sort of feel of the organisation, the support. I think the doing that in a hybrid world is harder.
Yeah.
But you have to ensure that you've then got some of those structures right. So, brilliant kind of engagement, internal comms, ability to kind of feedback, visible leadership, all of those things I think are really key. And we were based on a science park just outside of Cambridge. We are a hybrid organisation, but everyone is in the office a couple of days a week. Yeah. Teams are very good at bringing their own teams and working with other teams together. So we have times when we are physically all together, but we have times when we're all together, and that might be also virtually. And we bring all the organisation together at least once a year. And I think it's and ensuring we've got that kind of downtime. And I think that's the other bit that you often miss when you're not all in the office. But I think the culture isn't just about being at your desk to 9 to 5, and often that some of those organisations don't necessarily have cultures that I would want to to build here. So I think it is about having that kind of clear, good communication, about having the strength in terms of what it is we're trying to do, and people feeling their part within that sort of strengthens people's role and their culture, and their feeling supported in what they're doing and how they're doing it. So it's absolutely key. And I think it also, continues to evolve, and you need to be able to support people in whatever way that they're working, in whatever role that they have. So they very much feel part of this organisation. And it's probably something that I spend quite a bit of time as chief exec doing, and I'm very, very committed to. Yes. But it does become harder as you get bigger, and I think you have to be able to acknowledge that.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I say, it's utilising the tools that you've got at your disposal to be able to do that, to build that team mentality, as well as, I guess you said earlier, it's about bringing people back to the story, isn't it? I mean, that's not just thinking about, the work that you're doing for anybody in any role in any organisation. That motivating factor by the impact that you're having is huge. So it would be remiss of me not to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit more about Alzheimer's Research UK today, the work that you're doing, the impact that you're having. And I guess if people are, maybe hearing about the charity, the organisation for the first time, ways in which they might be able to support or get involved.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So we are leading fund of medical research. So we fund research into all of dementia. So when we're talking about dementia, there are a set of diseases that cause dementia. So there's Alzheimer's disease, there's vascular dementia, there's dementia with Lewy bodies, Parkinson's. So we're talking about a number of different diseases here. And what we really want to do is to be able to understand these diseases better, and ultimately to be able to find those cures. And so we do that through better understanding of how we can reduce our risk and prevent dementias, how we will be able to treat those diseases of the future, but also importantly, how we can then diagnose them. Because if we can't diagnose people properly, we're never going to be able to get the treatments to the right people at the right time. And we've got some really big challenges as an organisation. So at the moment, not enough people receive a diagnosis of the disease that's causing their dementia. Only 2% of people in the UK get what we see as a gold standard diagnosis for their disease. Right. But as I sort of mentioned earlier on, we're getting to the stage where there will be blood tests to see who's going to be at high risk of Alzheimer's disease, and then go through for further tests. We have the first 2 licensed treatments for Alzheimer's disease, something that, 5-10 years ago, that was an ambitious statement for this organisation, a disease-modifying treatment by 2025. And there were times where, I think all of us were, is this really possible? We absolutely want to put a date on it. We're ambitious. We're working together collectively with everyone in this space to be able to achieve that. We have achieved that. It is not yet available on the NHS. The first 2 medicines, they're not going to be the best medicines in the world, but they are proof of concept that actually we're not just riding on the hope of being able to cure dementia. We know that there are medicines available, but they're complex medicines to be able to give to people. There are some side effects, but nevertheless, there are treatments starting to come through. So that's really, really exciting. So we have a big challenge in terms of ensuring that future patient populations have access to those medicines, that we have infrastructure in place so that people will be able to access a timely diagnosis. And that won't be blood tests for everyone right now, but in 5 to 10 years' time, that absolutely will be blood tests for everyone. That'll be a finger prick blood test, for example. So huge advances in the science that we've been supporting. But also, I think that, the point that I've probably made sort of through this podcast is, this has been an issue that, so many people have faced within their families. And we know that 1 in 2 of us are going to be affected by dementia, either by getting it ourselves or looking after someone else with it. Yeah. It's the leading cause of death in the UK. So it's absolutely right that there's an organisation leading the way to say this isn't good enough. We need to ensure that we better understand these diseases, that there are treatments available. And actually, while we ensure that the treatments get better and more effective, people should get a diagnosis, and then they should have support and a pathway, like they would if there was a cancer diagnosis or any other major condition. You would have the right to a timely diagnosis, and you'd have post-diagnostic support. Those are things that often don't happen when it comes to dementia. And, as anyone who's been affected by this condition will know, it's often friends, family, loved ones that pick up a lot of the caring responsibilities to support and look after someone with the condition as well. So actually ensuring that there's an organisation out there championing on their behalf, and an organisation that they can get behind is hugely important. So there's lots of different ways that you can support us. You do head to our website. Everything from fundraising to campaigning, to signing up to being part of research yourself. There's lots of different things that you can do, as well as taking our Think Brain Health test. So the things that we know that you can do to reduce your risk of developing dementia in later life, starting right on early in life. But there's a quiz that you can take through our website that will give you some advice that would lower your risk of developing dementia as well.
Oh, brilliant! Oh, well, that's great. We'll make sure in the show notes that we include some links off to the test, but also clearly through to the website for ways in which people can, like you say, find out more and ways to get involved. Hilary, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing with us. We sort of like to always end off with a very similar question for our guests. Sort of say, if you could go back and talk to yourself at the very start of your career within the charity sector, or maybe there's a pivotal moment or something that stands out to you that's helped shape your career or helped influence your career through the sector, or you could give yourself a piece of advice back at the start of your career. Yeah, what do you think it would be?
Wow. I think, certainly younger self at the start of my career, I would have never believed I would have been in this position to be a chief executive of a leading UK medical research charity. And have had some of the incredible experiences that I've had and the achievements that this organisation have had and the team. So I think it would be to not to worry quite so much, not to sort of question myself and actually just have more belief in what you can do. And I think, that those sorts of things go a long way. But I think it's often tough at the sort of start of your career where you're sort of wrangling over kind of which job you should do and where you should take things. And actually, probably there's always those sort of serendipitous moments and opportunities come about, but a lot of that, I think, for me, is sort of trusting that sort of instinct of what's right for you and what's right for, and the right judgments for what you're working on having that kind of inner belief, because, generally for me, that's certainly always been right and helped sort of land me where I am today. But I think, it's certainly something that, I feel very grateful for the opportunity that I've had. But I think it's the kind of roles that I think it's a big responsibility actually to try and bring other people with us in terms of the charities itself, but actually show that you can be quite a shy, quiet schoolgirl at 15 who's interested in supporting your friends and whoever else, and end up at 45 in this kind of role. I certainly never would have believed it, but actually there's probably something that's quite good in that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really, really, really helpful. And I think, again, as a reflection on the conversation is, like I say, it's having that bravery when those opportunities, come up, and being able to step into them. Whilst, of course, the weight of, like you say, the responsibility that comes with these positions and the work that you're doing. I mean, clearly, the work that the organisation are doing, the transformation and the growth over the last decade is testimony to your leadership and to the team around you, and the board trustees and people that many people that have been and supported that journey along the way. So it's just been great to hear. Really interesting from my point of view, because organisation that I didn't know a huge amount about before we started this conversation. So really grateful for your time. Like I say, we'll make sure that you tag the organisation's tagged in the show notes as opportunities for people to come and ask questions, find out more and ways in which they can get involved. But again, a huge thank you for coming on the podcast, and it's been lovely to hear your insights. So thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Charity Changemakers Podcast. I hope you've been inspired by the incredible work being done across the charity sector. And this episode is proudly brought to you by my business, Charisma Charity Recruitment. We are passionate about delivering top-tier recruitment services to the charity sector that we care so much about. If your organisation is looking for expert support, then we'd love to help. Please do get in touch today. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe, like and share, because it helps us reach more people and showcase the amazing charities that come on the show. And for more episodes, please visit our website, charismarecruitment.co.uk. So until next time, keep change making.